This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror. Prison until the end. In the bowels of a prison, notorious for its neglect, where the sun's rays never reached and hope was a forgotten word, there existed a solitary confinement section, seldom checked by the guards. It was here that Michael found himself, not for a crime he committed with malice, but for defending his own dignity, a fight for survival that led him to this shadowy abyss. The days melded into one endless night for Michael, marked only by the scurrying of insects and the drip of distant, unseen water. His world was a small, dark cell, a punishment far exceeding his act of self-defense. The prison, indifferent to justice or welfare, left him forgotten, a ghost in its vast network of cells. Then, without warning, the earth began to tremble. An earthquake, fierce and unforgiving, targeted the heart of the prison. Walls that had stood for decades crumbled. The very foundations of the institution were shaken. Michael's section of solitary confinement bore the brunt of the quake's wrath, collapsing inward, sealing him away from even the slim chance of discovery. In the aftermath, trapped beneath rubble, with darkness as his eternal companion, Michael fought to survive. His sustenance were the insects that shared his prison, their bodies providing scant nourishment. But without water, his body began to betray him. His mind, once sharp and focused on survival, started to fray at the edges, hallucinations creeping in like unwelcome shadows. He saw faces in the darkness, faces of those he loved, those he had lost, and those he'd never met. They spoke to him, whispers of encouragement, jeers of disdain, siren calls to surrender to the embrace of death. Yet Michael fought on, driven by the sliver of hope that refused to die within him. Days turned into weeks. Michael's reality became a blur of madness and despair. Then, when all seemed lost, he heard a sound. Not the cruel taunts of his hallucinations, but clear, distinct. The sound of digging, rescue. After so long, could it be? With every ounce of strength left in his emaciated body, Michael cried out, his voice a hoarse whisper against the cacophony of moving earth. The digging stopped. Silence. Then a voice calling down to him, promising salvation. The rescuers worked tirelessly, removing rubble with care and precision. And then, light. A beam of pure, unfiltered daylight pierced the darkness. Hands reached down, lifting Michael from his tomb, carrying him towards the light. But as his eyes adjusted to the brightness, confusion took hold. The faces of his rescuers were not those of the living. They were the same faces that had haunted his hallucinations, smiling down at him with ethereal light in their eyes. Michael's body was never found in the wreckage of the prison. The rescuers, when questioned, swore they had dug in the right location, but found nothing but empty earth. Rumors spread of a ghost haunting the ruins of the solitary confinement section, whispering of injustices endured and a man who fought to survive until even hope had abandoned him. In the end, Michael's fate remained a mystery, a chilling reminder of the prison's neglect and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable despair. The unseen price of curiosity. In the heart of a forgotten town lay the remnants of Coleridge Prison, a relic from the 1800s, now reborn as a museum with a dark twist. Advertised to the elite as an exclusive experience, it promised a night in a refurbished jail cell, authentic meals from a bygone era, and a glimpse into the day-to-day lives of its former inmates. Little did the visitors know, their pursuit of thrill would lead them into a trap from which there was no escape. Eleanor, a thrill seeker with an insatiable appetite for the macabre, was among the wealthy tourists who received the glint-edged invitation. The promise of spending a night in a real prison cell, dining on meals once served to convicts, and walking the grounds where history's most notorious were confined was too tantalizing to resist. Upon arrival, the group was greeted by the curator, a man whose eyes seemed to hold centuries of secrets. He led them through the imposing iron gates, their creak echoing ominously through the air. The prison, though abandoned, felt alive, each step reverberating with the echoes of despair from ages past. The curator, with his enigmatic aura, guided the group along the weathered stone paths that snaked between towering walls. Vines clung fiercely to the sides, as if trying to reclaim the structure back into the earth from which it sprung. The air was thick with a palpable sense of history. Every stone and iron bar whispered tales of sorrow and lament. As we walked these hallowed grounds, the curator began, his voice a blend of reverence and an unsettling calm. You are treading the same path as countless souls before you. Men and women who lived, suffered, and often perished within these walls. Tonight, you will share in their experiences, a night unlike any other. The group's footsteps echoed into the empty courtyard, a vast expanse surrounded by the high prison walls that blocked out the last light of the setting sun. The curator paused before a heavy wooden door, its surface marked by the passage of time. With a key that seemed as ancient as the lock it opened, he ushered them into the depths of Coleridge Prison. Inside, the air was cooler, the ambiance shifting as they descended into the bowels of the prison. Torches flickered along the damp corridors, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and move on their own accord. The sound of dripping water echoed through the halls, a constant reminder of the attention to detail of this luxury prison experience. This way, the curator mentioned, leading them down a narrow corridor. The walls here were lined with cells, each door standing ajar. These were the living quarters of the inmates. Tonight, they will be your accommodations. Eleanor peered into one of the cells, her heart skipping a beat. The small, barren room contained nothing but a thin mattress on a solid stone slab and a rickety stool. While refurbished, it was a stark reminder of the harsh realities of prison life. The meals you will be served tonight, the curator continued, as they gathered around him once again, are replicas of the actual rations given to prisoners in the 1800s. It is all part of the experience, a taste of history, if you will. The group was silent, the gravity of their upcoming night beginning to sink in. The excitement of adventure was slowly replaced by a sense of tamed hesitation and apprehension. The ability to handle and experience discomfort from their everyday lives of luxury and comfort were underestimated. After showing them to their cells, the curator left with a parting remark that sent chills down Eleanor's spine. Tonight, the past and present blur. Listen carefully, for the walls of Coleridge whisper secrets, secrets of despair, of longing, and sometimes of vengeance. Good night, and may you find the experience enlightening. Dinner was served, the curator following through on his promise. The meal, the perfect embodiment of sorrow and hardship. The meal was more than mere sustenance. It was a lesson in humility, a stark reminder of the grim reality of prison life, of those who had once inhabited these cells. Those convicted souls, many of whom were perhaps no more guilty of life's cruel circumstances than they were of any crime, had endured much more than unpalatable meals. This realization settled heavily upon the group, a sobering cloud that dampened the earlier excitement of adventure. In the dim light, the stark reality of their surroundings became more pronounced. The cold, hard stone of the walls and floor offered no comfort, nor did the thin mattress that lay in each cell. Eleanor found herself tracing the grooves in the stones with her fingertips, wondering about the hands that had done the same centuries ago. Were they desperate for freedom, or had they accepted their fate within these oppressive confines? The curator, now more phantom than guide, had vanished into the shadows, leaving the group to their own devices. Whispers of unease began to circulate among them, a growing realization that their experience was not merely a night in a museum, but a vivid reimagination of confinement and despair. As darkness enveloped the prison, the line between past and present blurred further. The sounds of the night seemed to carry the whispers of former inmates, their voices mingling with the wind that sighed through the barred windows. Each creak and groan of the ancient prison seemed to tell a story of suffering and endurance. Eleanor lay on her cot, staring up at the ceiling where shadows danced. Sleep was elusive, chased away by the chilling atmosphere and the weight of history pressing down upon her. Tonight, they were all prisoners, bound not by chains, but by the eerie authenticity of their surroundings and the heavy realization of the human capacity for both cruelty and survival. A lucky few among the guests managed to drift into a restless slumber, their exhaustion overcoming the unsettling atmosphere of Coleridge Prison. However, Eleanor, like the majority, found herself ensnared in wakefulness, the eerie ambiance and the heavy mantle of history denying her any peace. The night stretched endlessly before them, the silence punctuated by the occasional turn or sigh from one of the other guests, a collective restlessness permeating the air. The darkness seemed to press in from all sides, dense and tangible, as if the very shadows were alive with the whispers of the past. As the night stretched on, it became clear that the true essence of Coleridge Prison wasn't in the physical discomforts, but in the haunting legacy of those who had once called it home. The realization that they were partaking in a history steeped in sorrow and hardship was a profound experience, one that would linger long after the doors were unlocked and the morning light dispelled the shadows. However, the break of day did not usher in any comfort. When the sunlight peeked through the cell walls, the doors remained locked, the curator nowhere to be found. Panic set in as they realized the phones and communication devices they'd been asked to surrender upon arrival for authenticity were not returned. Their calls for help echoed unanswered through the stone corridors. A chilling realization settled over them like a shroud. This was not a museum experience. It was a meticulously crafted prison, designed to ensnare them in a nightmare that seemed to have no end. The curator, who had initially appeared to be their guide into this historical foray, had vanished without a trace, leaving them to grapple with the truth of their situation. The absence of the curator, once a symbol of knowledge and authority within the prison walls, now underscored their isolation. It became clear he was merely a cog in a much larger, darker machine, a puppet whose strings had been cut as soon as his role in their entrapment was fulfilled. With each passing day, the weight of their reality pressed down harder. The prison, with its cold stone floors and iron bars, ceased to be a relic of the past and became their entire world. The initial thrill of historical immersion had evaporated, replaced by a palpable sense of despair and entrapment. Whispers of disbelief and fragments of hope that they might wake from their nightmare were silenced by the unyielding passage of time. The group, once vibrant with their curiosity and the excitement of adventure, now found themselves bound by the unspoken kinship of captives. The The group was left to confront not only the physical challenges of their confinement, but the psychological torment of knowing their entrapment was no accident. It was a nightmare conceived with precision, leaving them to ponder the motivations behind their selection for this cruel fate and to face the daunting question of whether they would ever regain their freedom. Unbeknownst to the new prisoners, a cult, long rumored to have been founded within the prison walls in the 1800s, had orchestrated the entire event. They preyed on the wealthy, those whose disappearances would cause ripples but would eventually be dismissed as eccentric escapades gone awry. The cult believed in the transference of power through suffering, and the wealthy were their chosen sacrifices, their wealth rendered meaningless in the face of eternal captivity. Eleanor and her companions vanished without a trace, their disappearance a mystery that lingered like a shadow over Coldridge Prison. Despite exhaustive searches and public outcry, not a single clue emerged to shed light on their fate, as if the ancient walls themselves had swallowed them whole. In the wake of this tragedy, the museum shuttered its doors, ostensibly in mourning and respect for the lost. Yet beneath this veneer, the prison's true nature lurked, biding its time. Authorities, while diligent, found themselves stonewalled at every turn. Evidence evaporated like mist, and witnesses recanted their statements, influenced by the subtle pressures exerted by the cult's members. The few who dared to dig deeper found themselves ostracized, or worse, their careers and lives unraveling in mysterious circumstances. The sinister purpose of Coldridge was carefully obscured by a network of influential individuals whose power and reach dissuaded any prying eyes. Behind the scenes, the cult maintained their grip on Coldridge. This cabal, operating under the guise of preserving history, was in fact dedicated to reenacting it, selecting their victims with precision to ensure none would be missed too keenly by the outside world. Their rituals and sacrifices performed in the shadows of history, hidden from the world. They targeted thrill seekers and adventure enthusiasts, particularly those with strong ties to the community, luring them with the promise of an unparalleled historical immersion experience. This clandestine group had mastered the art of manipulation, not just of their guests, but of the narrative surrounding Coldridge Prison. They spun tales of ghostly hauntings and supernatural occurrences, framing the disappearances as part of the legend, adding a layer of intrigue that only served to attract more visitors. The echoes of the lost souls, including Eleanor and her fellow guests, became part of the prison's haunting chorus, a chilling testament to the price of curiosity in the face of malevolent forces masquerading as guardians of history. The whispers of the damned that were said to echo through the halls became another feature of the attraction, a macabre selling point for those drawn to the thrill of the paranormal.